Yuta, how would you describe yourself right now for those who don't know? They're like, Brother Jeff is talking to Yuta K. Bet. Yuta, who is she? How would you describe yourself today, 2025? Who is Yuta K. Best?
These days, I'm mostly known as a spiritual life coach, spiritual guide. I have a talk show called Hella Random Radio where positive energy lives. So, a teacher. I just started a bunch of Zoom meditation circles because I think for people, I think meditation is probably not an easy tool. It's not easy to start, but once you get it, I think it can be one of the most transforming tools that you can get. And it's all up to you, like coaching, you kind of have to trust that person and believe what that person is saying. But if you have a strong meditation practice, you tap into your own higher self and you follow that guidance instead of another human. You talked about if you follow your astrological chart. What is that and how do you follow it? Well, there's lots of sites. Cafe Astrology is one of my favorite ones where you can just go get a free birth chart and put in your birthday, your date, time, and location. If you have all of those things, you can also just put in the date. And it'll give you what we call, I guess, a Western astrological chart. There's also another type of astrology called sidereal or Jyotish, which is deeper. You probably need somebody to do that for you. But I suggest doing both. I definitely suggest, pulling up your own birth chart and trying to read the things and see if they resonate with you, especially if you are living a life that you don't love. Something has gone wrong. We're not really meant to just suffer the whole time, and if there's something that you want that you don't have, that is a place to start doing your own research. If you can't, invest in getting support, from someone else.
Okay. There's something to this. I'm just following along because it's interesting because let me split it this way. Every spiritual tradition that I've read or come across, someone's always talking about a star, a time, a birth, a season, this or a that. And it sounds like you're kind of saying the same thing that is written by different folks. And I'm wondering if different folks have either just missed the message or has it been processed away from individuals who could perhaps learn something about something and get somewhere, maybe even free, because somehow I followed the North Star.
Yeah, there are definitely people who believe that the 3 wise men who found Jesus were astrologers.
Gerald said, Well, knowledge reigns supreme and it will make you a king or a queen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the knowledge is helpful. You're going to have to practice something. No, just being smart is not going to do it for you. You got to be more than smart.
Now you're talking about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding.
Yes,
there's a bunch to it.
Yes.
A lot of people know stuff, but they can't do nothing with what they know.
Right.
But when you're able to apply your knowledge, then you're taking it to another level.
Exactly.
So let me ask this, Yuta K. Best. In knowing your birth chart, is that like having an atlas or a map, or how? Like, give me an idea of what you can do with your birth chart.
Yeah, I definitely think that it can be a map. I don't think that it has to be a map. And that's why I say, there are people who can help you and really pinpoint some things. But if you have any kind of skepticism, and skepticism is healthy, just do it yourself. These things are trying to describe you. Mm-hmm. And so when you read it, if it resonates with you or not. And if it doesn't resonate with you, then that's not your tool. There's a billion different tools and modalities out here that we can use to help us find the answers that we're seeking.
I like my little spiritual gurus by the name of Bobby Womack, and he always says it's cool if you can handle it.
Shout out to Bobby Womack.
Shout out to Bobby Womack. It's cool if you can handle it. You know, so give me an idea of how an astrological chart or birth record or any of that can be utilized, or you've seen utilized, or like the basic 101 type stuff. I know that there's probably an entry point, and then there's probably something that is very, very
in depth. But
take me to 101 for just a moment, if you don't mind. Take me to 101, if you don't mind.
Well, for me, I can use my own example. And so I was an engineer for, almost 10 years. I was pretty much a given because I was, a second grade black girl in the project scoring off the charts in math and science. So that's all I was taught. It was a given, pretty much, that I was going to be an engineer. But when I left, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was outside of that job and, being able to raise my hand and get the right answer. I was completely conditioned by school. So astrology was one of the first places that helped me to begin to, what I like to say, remember who I am.
Wow. I mean, I'm okay. Thinking above, some might even call that the heavens.
Ashe.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Space is weird
below
too.
the earth and all of that different things. But just thinking about it, what you are talking about, they use in the science of warfare. They use it in the science of getting this signal to this phone. They put artificial satellites up into space.
Yeah.
And they do these pings and they do all of these different things.
Right.
And so in knowing that someone knows that and utilizes that, why would they think it's strange for anyone else to say, I know how to utilize space, environment, whatever? Like,
I mean, because we've been made afraid of that kind of stuff. I mean, and not only do scientists and things like that use it, but J.P. Morgan Chase says millionaires might not have an astrologer, but a billionaire does.
Hold on, say that again.
He said that a millionaire might not have an astrologer, but a billionaire does.
Wow. Where do you get an astrologer from? Like, where can you go get one?
Well, here in Denver, I definitely suggest Shechem Ra.
Okay.
But, they're probably all over the internet. You could probably search. Now, you definitely want to be careful, have some conversations with folks. Don't just be handing out a bunch of money. And like I said, you might want to start just by reading your own chart. There's lots of places where you can go for free, put in your birthday and get your own chart. So start, in my opinion, just by reading your own and seeing if that makes sense to you.
As a woman, as a black woman, as someone in tune, and you know how the universe moves, I think in circular, kind of a circular motion.
Yeah, most people believe that.
Okay, but okay, is the planet rotating?
Yes.
Okay, like rotating.
I believe so. There are these new flat earth people.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
I don't,
Okay.
I don't want to fight.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Okay, so they often say, and I don't know, that a woman certainly has a cycle.
Yes, absolutely.
But I've also heard men have cycles as well, but are not necessarily in tune, because a woman with her cycle, when she's in tune, something is happening all of the time and, regularly.
Yeah.
And it can correlate with
the moon.
Yeah. Because there's a gravitational pull and all of those different things. How would you describe what I just said for the person who's trying to figure out where I'm even going with that?
Just that there's a natural way of being.
Yeah.
And I hear that maybe men don't have like a menstrual cycle or anything like that, but the moon is in the sky for everybody to look at. And if you're trying to find a more natural rhythm, it doesn't even have to be a big thing. Just, make it a little bit of habit of recognizing where the moon is, and over time it'll kind of become second knowledge that where the moon is. And again, I understand that there's reason to be skeptical about these things, but to me, the moon should be less hard to believe in, because we all agree, for the most part, that the moon is what moves the oceans. The moon is what's responsible for the tides, so if it can move those huge bodies of water, and we're mostly water, our brain is all, 90+% water. If the moon can move the ocean, why wouldn't it have some effect on us and all the water that's in us?
It has to.
It does.
A billionaire knows it. A millionaire might not.
JP Morgan Chase knows it.
I'm with you to K Best. We're coming into the new year, and if you are into a particular calendar, because there are many calendars as well, right?
Yes, for sure.
And depending on where you are, there might be different cultures that are using different calendars, but the concept of consistency is there.
Yeah.
The rising, the sunrise and the sunset, if you were to mark from one to another, the consistency is there.
Yeah.
Coming into 2025, and those who say that, they recognize that there's something new that came in, a new year.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about New Year resolutions, new moons, new times, new seasons? Are there time to plant and a time to pick up or pluck what you planted? Like, how does all of that work?
Yeah, well, I definitely believe that the first of the year is a new beginning. The numbers changed. We went from 2024, which, when you add that up, that's 8, to 2025. When you add that up, that's 9. So there was definitely a shift in the beginning there. As far as actual like resolutions and things of that nature, if you're into that, I generally suggest trying to either start that in the middle of January, or if you're really going to be about that, you want to do that the week leading into the solstice, the winter solstice, which is, right before Christmas in general.
Is it interesting how the winter solstice and you could even say Hanukkah and I think like Ramadan and all of them, but Ramadan changes with the turning and the cycle a little bit, but there are times when all of them align. But December seems to be a very, if I could say it this way, spiritually rich time of year.
Yeah.
And some will say Christmas, some will say Hanukkah, some will say solstice, some will say lights, some will say all these different things. But no matter what you're saying, at that period of time, something very rich is taking place.
Right. So the solstice is the winter solstice is the longest night of the year, and if you're into spiritualism at all, the daytime kind of represents the time to be focused on the material outside world, and the nighttime is the time to be focused on the spiritual internal world, and so that's what the winter solstice is all about. It's a really spiritual time. It's a time to spend more time focused inside yourself than it is out in the world, but things like Christmas and we got to do all this shopping and stuff, it's, it's pretty distracting from that internal focus.
What is a solstice?
The solstice just means there's a winter solstice, which is the longest night of the year. There's the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. And at the midpoint between those, there are the 2 equinoxes, the spring equinox and the fall equinox.
And when you think of those things, like you as a person in your own particular journey or understanding, what do you do during those periods of time?
For the winter solstice, like at least the week leading into the winter solstice, I try to fast as much as possible this year. The 4 days leading up into the solstice, which was a Saturday. So that Tuesday through Friday before the solstice, I had no radio, no TV. I was just creating art, meditating as much as possible, fasting as much as possible, just being really silent, opening myself up to whatever wisdom, my higher self might be compelled to share with me. But I enjoyed it so much that I also wiped off my calendar for Christmas week and did it again.
I understand. Okay, so you mentioned higher self. Talk about higher self, lower self, vibrations and karma and colors and I'm trying to get all of it today.
Yeah, I hear that. Let's get it in.
It's the new year. I want to talk to you about all of these things. And folks talk higher self and vibrations and colors and chakras and all of those things. Do you pay attention to any of that?
All of that.
What is the higher self?
In my opinion, the higher self is our spirit, or that aspect of us that is a part or connected to God. I think we're maybe getting over it, but especially when I came up in church, I always the way they talked about it, and I don't think it was a direct message, but I kind of picked up the message that my spirit or my soul was inside of my body, and what I know now is that my body is actually inside of my spirit. I am a believer that one is all and all is one, and all of this space around us that looks empty is not empty. It's full of information that makes up our spiritual body, and we can, do enough healing and meditating and things of that nature to where we start having more access to this information that's out here in this field or in our spirit.
Have you gotten into this thing called the meaning of life? Have you pondered that? Have you centered yourself, got your on or however it is, and been like, man, I'm about to really get into this meaning of life, and this is what life means to me. What does life mean to Yuta?
My judgment is that we are all here to figure out how to create our own little heaven on earth.
Wow. How do you do that?
Well, first it was by detaching, by recognizing how conditioned I was to fit into a system that is unnatural, and then just slowly unlearning all of that unnatural stuff and starting to do things that were more natural, that really brought me joy. I personally believe that, before ego sets in around 4 years of age, and certainly when we're first born, I believe we know exactly why we came to this planet. Mm-hmm. And then ego comes on, we start getting socialized, we get put in the box at school, and we just start forgetting. But it's never gone. You can always remember